Good evening and thank you for joining us. More than a year after he was suspended, a workplace harassment investigation against Deputy Police Chief Ryan Hughes has concluded.
It's now up to the Thunder Bay Police Services Board, which met this morning to determine Hughes' future with the force. Vasilios Bellos reports.
Thunder Bay's Deputy Police Chief Ryan Hughes has been suspended since January of last year, with the service yet to provide details of the allegations. Since then, an external investigation has been conducted, with the findings not yet released to the public. It now falls on the Thunder Bay Police Services Board to determine next steps for Hughes.
That means our board is considering the reports and making a decision as to how to respond to the findings with respect to the deputy himself and his suspension.
Hannam was unable to provide any timelines on a decision. Also during this police board meeting, the two newest members were sworn in, city appointee Denise Baxter and provincially appointed Karen Machado.
Got four very good people, and I'm very pleased about that.
Board Administrator Malcolm Mercer, whose term is set to wrap up at the end of March, says he has faith in those currently around the table. Despite this, he says there's a number of factors to consider when deciding whether his term will be extended again.
The board has been a four-person board out of five for its very first meeting, and it will, I think, take both training and experience for the board to be fully functional. It becomes a question of judgment at what point I should cease to be the sole voting member and things should change.
Public consultation results were also released during the meeting regarding the use of BriefCam by police, a video analytics and AI technology software. Director of Technology Chris Adams says the feedback was primarily positive, though invasion of privacy was a concern.
Well, we've taken the very clear position that facial recognition right now is off the table. We're not interested in using it. We want to use it just as object recognition and a way of sorting all of that vast amount of video evidence that the service is faced with.
While the public consultation survey is completed regarding the AI technology, the pilot project continues. Next steps include a board governance policy, proper training for those authorized to use the software, and consultation with the Crown Attorney. Vasilios Bellos, TBT News.
One of Thunder Bay's largest elementary schools will be closed tomorrow due to an electrical issue. Woodcrest Public School is being shut down to all students and staff due to what the Lakehead Public School Board is calling, quote, maintenance issues beyond our control. The closure also impacts the Woodcrest daycare. The public announcement came late this afternoon just as classes wrapped up for the day. Director of Education Sherry Lynn Farron says they're hoping the electrical issue can be repaired tomorrow, but it will depend on the extent of the problem and whether parts are available locally. Parents will be updated as more information becomes available, including if the closure ends up lasting more than one day. Woodcrest School has approximately 570 students.
A popular restaurant in Red Lake burned to the ground over the weekend. The major blaze at the Thirsty Moose was one of the most serious fires seen by the town's volunteer fire service. The damage was limited to the restaurant and no injuries have been reported. Firefighters responded to reports of smoke just before midnight on Friday night. But when they attempted to enter the building, the conditions are already too dangerous to fight the fire from inside. Red Lake Fire Chief Dexter Hoopy says the fire crew showed professionalism while working through the night to extinguish the blaze.
Yeah, absolutely. So when the firefighters first got there, they opened up the front door and they pulled the hose line inside to go fight the fire like you would see on TV or what firefighters normally do. That's when we started seeing some thicker black smoke. They were saying it was getting really, really hot in there. And even with our personal protective equipment, it's not going to prevent us from everything, right? So the moment we start feeling heat through our bunker gear, we know it's getting really hot in there.
The damage was so extensive that Hoopy says it will not be possible to determine a cause for the fire, which will officially be declared undetermined and non-suspicious.
It looks like Sioux Lookout and Kenora will get additional help from the province to offset the high cost of policing in those communities, but not as much as they'd hoped for. Those municipalities have been lobbying for a year as part of the Fair Cost Policing Coalition, which also includes Pickle Lake. OPP costs are already subsidized in all three communities. Sioux Lookout Mayor Doug Lawrance says the coalition met with officials from the Ministry of the Solicitor General last Tuesday. He says they committed to increasing the discount provided to Sioux Lookout from 35% to 40% and to Kenora from 5% up to 15%. Lawrance says even with the additional help, they're still far from the target cost of $320 per property per year.
I think that the engagement, the coalition worked and the engagement worked, and I'm graciously disappointed with the relief that we got. Grateful that they've recognized the need for it. Disappointed that it wasn't a deeper discount.
Lawrence says he's still waiting for written confirmation of that verbal agreement. In a statement, the Solicitor General's office says, quote, "The ministry is assessing policing costs in these municipalities. Should any agreement be reached, details would be released at the appropriate time."
In an effort to reduce wait times, the Ontario government has tabled a controversial bill that would allow the province to expand private clinics in the public healthcare system.
Bold and innovative plan will significantly reduce surgical and diagnostic wait times, enhance collaboration across the health system, and ensure patient safety will continue to be paramount.
In the bill called the Your Health Act, patients wouldn't have to pay out of pocket, and procedures like hip and knee surgeries would be publicly funded. Meanwhile, it was a fiery opening to the new sitting of the legislature today at Queen's Park. Healthcare, the future of the Greenbelt, and questions about relationships with developers are all expected to be hot-button topics in the coming days and weeks. Siobhan Morris explains.
The leader of His Majesty's Loyal Opposition.
In her first question period as opposition leader, Merritt Stiles grilled the Premier on his links to developers and their presence at wedding events for one of his daughters last year.
Can the Premier explain to Ontarians how they are supposed to believe that these developers weren't given a heads up about his plans for the Greenbelt?
Plans to open parts of it up to allow for construction of homes.
My family is separate than the political process. They aren't involved. I had an opportunity to speak to the Integrity Commissioner, Mr. Speaker. I asked him for his opinion, and he found there was no violation.
The Integrity Commissioner is still examining whether developers were tipped off by the Housing Minister or his staff. The Premier punted follow-up questions to the government House Leader.
Yes, we're also fighting to ensure that young families can afford to get their first homes.
Something Stiles bristled at.
Is this how our province works now? One set of rules for the Premier's friends and associates and another for everyone else. Yeah, that's how it is.
The way the province works is that this government is working every single day to build a more prosperous, strong Ontario. So, Mr. Speaker.
That was CTV's Siobhan Morris reporting. Mike Schreiner will stay on as the leader of the Ontario Green Party.
It is vital that we work together to build a caring, connected, climate-ready province that puts people, planet, and province first.
The Guelph MPP released a video statement saying he intends to hold his current position. Dozens of Liberals penned a letter to Schreiner last month asking him to consider crossing the floor and running for the Liberal Party leadership. At the time, Schreiner said he needed to talk the decision over with Green Party supporters.
Thunder Bay Atikokan MPP Kevin Holland spoke at Queen's Park today regarding human trafficking and access to resources and supports in smaller communities for those who've experienced abuse. He posed a question to the Minister of Children, Community and Social Services, Mayor Lee Fullerton.
Many women that leave these circumstances often face challenges in finding support. These obstacles are more pronounced in rural and remote parts of Ontario, where distances make accessing resources extremely difficult. Everyone has the right to be safe. As a government, we are responsible for directly addressing this issue. Speaker, what is our government doing to support these women and children?
No matter where you live, access to support and services should be available for the victims of gender-based violence and sexual exploitation. So we acted. We invested up to $6.5 million in support so survivors can access the services and supports they need to heal and rebuild their lives, and to get their children access to the early interventions they need to heal from experiencing and seeing violence at a young age.
The SIU investigates incidents involving police that result in death, serious injury, or allegations of sexual assault, but it doesn't cover every police jurisdiction in Ontario. Now, a NAPS officer here in Northern Ontario says that needs to change. John Woodward reports.
Working at the Anishinaabe-Aski Police Service was Constable Don Loker's dream job.
Probably the happiest day of my life when I got that call.
After several violent incidents, the toll of working alone in remote communities without backup had an impact: severe post-traumatic stress.
That's just what happens when you're by yourself and you have a lack of resources.
When she returned to work after a leave in 2019, she was assigned a partner to help. Instead, she claims in a $50 million human rights complaint that partner sexually assaulted her 3 times in the police station and in police vehicles.
He stole me. Well, he took me away from me. And now I don't have my career, my dream job anymore. That's gone.
The filings say NAPS carried out its own internal investigation, which substantiated an allegation of discreditable conduct against Constable Kenneth Charles for sexual acts at work. The filings also say NAPS forwarded Loker's complaint within hours of receiving it to the OPP, which also investigated but declined to lay criminal charges.
All the reports that I've read show that there was tremendous bias. There was tremendous bias and irregularities in what happened in the investigations.
Loker's lawyer, Gary Bennett, says Loker believed the police investigations couldn't be truly independent and asked for a civilian-led investigation from the province's Special Investigation Unit, but was denied. That's because, unlike municipal forces or the OPP, Indigenous police forces like NAPS aren't under the SIU's jurisdiction unless they agree to be.
Ontario is kind of the lone jurisdiction, the lone province that operates in that way. It really comes down to, the set-aside agreements that the local First Nations or Indigenous community has with the provincial and federal government, and whether they want that type of oversight or not.
Legislation in Ontario was passed in 2019 to make it easier for these agreements to be made, but it hasn't yet been enacted. Constable Charles's lawyer told us, "We state simply that our client steadfastly and vehemently denies the allegations against him. Regardless of whether our client remains a named party, we are convinced that the tribunal will absolve Mr. Charles from any wrongdoing, just as 2 prior impartial investigators have done with respect to these and other allegations made by Ms. Loker." NAPS is also fighting the claim, and through its lawyer said in the last 5 years, NAPS has not had any circumstances with its officers and civilians that have resulted in serious injury, death, or allegations of sexual assault, the usual criteria for SIU involvement. Loker feels the gap in oversight is another way remote Ontario communities are being let down.
These communities that we work in are vulnerable enough. So has this happened to them?
Communities Loker worries after this, she'll never get to police again. John Woodward, CTV News.
Some well-known fast food chains will soon return to Thunder Bay. Taco Bell and Mary Brown's Chicken both pulled out of the city many years ago, but new locations will now open this year on West Arthur Street. Meanwhile, a third Burger King is also getting set to open across from Intercity Shopping Centre. Mike Lang has more.
It won't be long before the new Mary Brown's Chicken and Taco Bell locations will be open in Thunder Bay for the first time in at least a decade. The 2 fast food outlets will both be located in a new strip mall at Arthur Street Marketplace, just across from the Walmart in Metro. The 5-unit mini mall broke ground in the spring of 2022 and is starting to fill up with tenants.
We've had a lot of interest in this space since we started construction on it last season, both from local businesses as well as multinationals. So we actually have a waiting list of people that are hoping to get in here. Mary Brown's used to be here. They left a couple of years ago, I believe over a decade ago, but they did have interest in coming back to Thunder Bay. So through all of our companies, they've had interest in the area. And once we saw that this opportunity was coming forward, we advised them of it, and they showed great interest.
Way back in the 1980s and 90s, Mary Brown's used to have 3 locations in Thunder Bay on Red River, Arthur Street, and Cumberland Street. Taco Bell briefly had a location on Red River and another one inside the Silver City movie theater. DeGregorio says the Arthur Street Marketplace is a prime location for local and franchise businesses, given its proximity to Thunder Bay Airport and development of new homes in the southwest end.
If you look, a lot of the new homes that are being built in Thunder Bay, they seem to be in the southwest quadrant of the city, here moving west between here, Parkdale, Roslyn. So it's definitely a good site to invest in for these type of businesses. They catch a lot of traffic.
According to DeGregorio, the Mary Brown's is expected to open in May, and the Taco Bell is scheduled to open in September. Meanwhile, construction of the city's third Burger King is just about complete. It's located off Fort William Road across from Intercity Shopping Center, and it's expected to open sometime in the next few weeks. Mike Lang, TBT News.